Just a couple of announcements before we start going through the various budget items. Announcements. Thursday, January 14th, this Thursday at 7 p.m. in this room, the Matthew Thornton Room, we'll have a regular town council meeting. On next Thursday, January 21st at 6 p.m. in this room, another budget hearing. On Monday, January 25th, 6 p.m. in this room, another budget meeting. And on Thursday, January 28th at 7 p.m. in this Matthew Thornton Room, a regular council meeting. So shall we jump right in? Library. Come on down. And that is tab 15. Hopefully I have the correct numbers tonight. Good evening.
Good evening.
You can proceed and
right
just
in?
go right ahead.
Okay. Okay, so first thing I'll address, you'll see the town manager's line, or the column, is an adjustment of $16,670. That's being removed. That's the amount that we put in for a 2.5% cost of living increase for all employees. Good news is we're not asking you to put that back in the budget.
I'm sorry, could you say that again? The good news is what?
We're not asking you to put that back into the budget. Paul recommended that we take a look at the health insurance options, and so we've been doing that, crunching numbers to switch to an SOS plan with deductibles. We come pretty close on that. Of course, we're calculating on the maximum rate, which we don't know if that's going to go any lower come April. So we're short right now about $2,000, hoping that that comes in under that, and then we'd still be able to give that cost of living increase and stick within this budget.
I did have that question marked because I wasn't clear.
What was the percentage again, please?
2.5%.
Thank you.
So I'll turn it over to Yvette so she can go through some of the kind of the highlights of other changes that we made on here.
Okay.
Okay, I don't know if you have any questions that I could address right off the bat, or if you just want me to systematically go through this.
Yeah, just go through it, and you can probably you don't have to do every every line item, but
Not every line item.
no, we'll
Because
be here
I
forever.
have time.
We don't.
Okay, on him, I will hustle. Okay.
But just highlight and any differences, basically, what such and such are the same, Paul?
We all know about the 53rd week pay and stuff like that,
that's
so
your
you can
thing.
skip that
I
one.
won't talk about it.
Would you just talk about that for a minute, because I don't think we've made that really public.
Okay.
It would be true for all the departments.
It will be true for every department. It's what we call the 53rd week of payroll. It's we pay weekly, and by paying weekly, there is 365 days in a year. And if you do 7 times 52, it's 364 days. So you pick up a day every so often. In a leap year, you pick up 2 days. So you have to make up for that in accounting purposes to make sure that your fiscal year end, which is a June 30th, you're actually paying your payroll for that week that is accrued the last week of the month of June in the right fiscal year. It just so happens that this year there's a 53rd payroll. I think I've been here 11 years. I think maybe this was 8 years ago. This is the second time in my 11 years that we had to do a 53rd week payroll. So it comes up every 6 to 7 years for the 53rd, and this was the magical year that we have to pick up the 53rd. And basically what that does is just gets our pay period, the last pay period of the month, the last week of the month, back to what fiscal year it properly is recorded to. So that's why we have the extra payroll, about $227,000 for general fund.
But budget-wise, it has to be
Has to
reflected.
be reflected.
Because, okay,
In appropriations, because we have to gross appropriate
right.
by state statute.
And I don't think we had mentioned that before, so I thought that was a good time. We'd jump on your discussion and clarify that.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
There's 52.14 7-day weeks in a year, and that .14 catches up to you every once in a while because your last payday In 1 year will be your 53rd.
So thank you for bringing that up.
I didn't bring it up. I won't take credit for it.
Okay.
So we're, in the personnel line, we are hoping to add 2 positions. One is a summer library student intern for youth services for 10 weeks. What we've seen in the past 2 years, we've advertised for unpaid student interns. These are library students that we're looking for to come help us out because summer is very busy. Hoping they can gain some information, knowledge, experience about working at a public library while they're in school. Oddly enough, students want to get paid for internships, and nobody wants to work for us for free. So we're going to try advertising it again with a small incentive attached to that. The other thing is that we're hoping to add a part-time secretary for myself. I'm not too proud to admit that I can't do everything that my trustees would like me to do. I need a little assistance. We'll just move along.
There is a, you'll see, technical services aide is no longer at the library, so that kind of balances out the secretary for Yvette.
Right, we did do a little bit of trimming in the personnel that existed in last year's budget, so that it almost is a wash. We also want to add someone to come in seasonally to do the snow removal. This is something we've kind of talked about in last year's budget. And it's very challenging to try and contract someone to just come in and shovel because the town does such a wonderful job plowing the lot. A lot of vendors want to plow and shovel, not just come in and shovel.
Have you spoken to the Adult Community Center? Because they hire someone to just shovel.
Yeah, we've had some suggestions which didn't pan out.
Okay.
So
Okay. Because I know that
you're
they're in a
looking at the
similar-
shoveler right now. So,
as
but
well
if we
as the
could,
secretary.
But if we could hire a part-time seasonal person, that was a suggestion that Paul had. So that's what that is on the first page. I'll just bounce to another great idea, actually, that Paul and Sharon had was, and I'm looking at the third page under 15.8143. We added a line called incentives.
What was? Can you say that again? Oh, okay, I see it.
Yeah, 8143 incentive.
Yeah.
This would be new. Though I understand that the town already does this in town government. Eileen has a line where she can, award a staff person an incentive, a financial incentive, if they're doing excellent work. I loved this idea personally because now, in Merrimack, we recognize staff who've been employed in the town or employed at the library for a number of years, so we really recognize longevity. I think I really like the idea of also recognizing excellence. So that was kind of a guideline that Paul gave us to put this line in, and it would be my discretion to be able to award that if there's a staff person who's really going above and beyond. We'd have to, with the trustees, kind of write down, here's the guidelines so that employees would know clearly this is what it means to go above and beyond, and then we can have some clear parameters of how to award that.
Do you have a question, Sam?
Of Paul, I think. I thought we had the incentive type program we had. I thought it was if you came forward with a proposal, an idea that would possibly save the town money. We had one at solid waste.
Yeah, that's part of it. The other part is if Eileen goes above and beyond, if somebody's going above and beyond their job.
We have a dollar amount that
We have a dollar amount in general. We'll go over that in general government. It's $5,000 that we have.
It's been there, though?
It's been there. Yeah.
That's sad on my part, isn't it? Thank you. Gosh.
Go right ahead.
Okay. We wanted to kind of show more clearly under the telephone line, 8260, how all of these lines are bundled, because one line appears to be cost more than the other lines, and it's just because there are so many different lines bundled in it. It doesn't really change the line amount. I had a slight increase in dues and fees. I've been encouraging my staff to attend more professional development opportunities opportunities, including conferences, and so that's what the increase is. They're actually taking me up on it, which is fantastic. We had some adjustments in the maintenance line. This was some conversation with Paul about, the AC cost increasing that line, but the trash decreasing, so there's kind of a little bit of juggle there. Computer services, this is 8353. This is really our consortium dues for our library consortium, GMILCs. Those, we always expect those to increase, and they always increase, so I always want to plan for them to increase. That is, a little bit challenging to estimate, but we always want to protect that line because otherwise we can't really do business in the level that we're doing. So that's always going up.
Quick question before you move on. And this isn't questioning why you're doing it, I just want to know. You have Comcast and FiOS. Do you use both, or just?
Yes, we have to keep our Comcast separate from the staff side. So we have internet for staff,
Right.
which is much more protected with more firewalls. And then we have internet for the public, which has maybe a more normal level of protection. We want to protect everyone's privacy for their records and that kind of thing, so we have to keep it separate.
But is that the FiOS then? Is that
FiOS is,
different?
we're switching, that's a difference in the company.
Right.
One company was purchased out by, G4 was purchased by First Light, and now they're offering FiOS. That's something we're talking about now in the consortium.
Okay, so you don't have Comcast for both. That's why I'm confused.
That's separate.
They're running two separate internet services, and it's the easiest way that they can break the two internet services is they run their Comcast line, and that's for their staff, and anything doing with the public is run with G4 or their DSL line.
Anything
So
to
they-
do-
It's the reverse, but yes, that's it. yeah.
Reverse, or the other way around. So they
Yeah.
keep them separate. There's two separate.
You couldn't have
Internets.
two separate
You could with
Comcast lines?
You could with some firewall issue if you set it up, but the way that their consultant set it up was to have two
Okay.
separate.
Exactly. Yeah, and this is
Okay.
really, it does come down from our consultant, from our GMILC staff.
Okay.
And they are very, very serious about firewalling.
Okay,
And
gotcha.
if that's their recommendation, we absolutely are going to
Gotcha.
go with that.
Okay, so that makes more sense.
Yeah.
Tom?
So the Comcast line in here is $192 for a year for public internet?
Mhm. We are looking at different ways to have our Gmail hosted. I mean, we are always discussing how can we save money, how can we do things
I understand that
better.
seems like an incredibly low number that's
A
what,
low number?
Oh,
$15 a month
It's 19,
for public internet access?
yeah, it's 19 and change that I pay every month.
That's cheap. That seems true. I mean, compared to the 4,680 for the First Light, I mean, there's a vast difference in those
Yeah.
two numbers.
Yeah.
Did they get a break because of the library?
Well, why? What's going on?
They get a rate because of the library. They also get a rate because of the municipality.
For the public internet, but not for the other one?
Well, for the Comcast,
Okay.
but the other one is a private vendor,
And they don't care about municipality.
and they just charge what. I won't say they don't care about municipalities. They just charge their going. They have a municipal rate, and it's much higher than what
Yeah.
Comcast is.
It's almost $400 a month.
Well, the other thing that Jen is reminding me of, the staff side, that's everything. That's our website hosting, so that's going to be like $360 a month, so there's your $400 right there. But we are looking into moving to a different email host.
60 a month?
So, but it's all, I can bring you a bill if you want to
Well,
see.
no, I believe you. That seems like a lot too. See, you're more computer literate than I am, you know that.
Yeah, so that's hosting the whole website. All of that is on there, so.
Sure, but it's also
Right,
also
and
our
the internet.
catalog. I mean, it's everything on the staff side.
Okay.
But if you want to see it,
No, I was just
an
curious why
invoice
you
or
had two internet providers.
talk to someone who knows much more about it. I'm happy to call them.
I don't know enough about it to even know what questions to ask.
Okay. Yeah, we're hoping to add some things.
Did you have a question, Bill? I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Bill, I didn't recognize.
So for the FiOS, as it relates to the consortium, is it fair to assume, and I don't like to use that word, but is it fair to assume that that also provides access to the other different libraries so that when a person comes in looking for a specific book, if it's not in Merrimack, it might be in Derry, it might be in Litchfield, it might be in
Well-
Manchester, so therefore that fee is incumbent of providing access for the consortium piece of what's available in other libraries?
We're paying for how many, I am not the tech person who I just pay the bills. And I approve what they recommend to me. I'll tell you, one of the things that we're looking at with FiOS is they're looking at, we have a line, and Paul will know about this, there's a line outside the library. We were just talking about it at the board meeting, I want to say 2 or 3 months ago, about things that First Light is doing, and they're able to move to FiOS. We don't have FiOS yet, but they're looking to move to it and give us a better rate for what we're currently doing. For Merrimack, it would be a cost-saving move because we have a line that's right outside the building on a pole that they can drop. Our town already has FiOS, as I understand what they're saying to me. In another town in our consortium, their cost would jump by several 100% because they'd have to run the line for that service to the town. And they, so in terms of how we're talking about it on a board level in the consortium, for us it's a great deal because we'd save money. For another town that I won't mention, it's a real challenge for them and they don't want to go for it. So we're kind of doing this piecemeal, and every individual library is able to decide, well, I'd rather get my internet that way, and it's going to be faster and better and more secure and cheaper, because we already have this drop in Merrimack.
But to go to Bill's question, I think the GMILKs is how you get access to all those other libraries, not
Yes.
particular internet provider. So the
Yes.
$40,000,
No, 4,600.
4,600.
no, the
So
GMILKs
the
consortium, 41,000
41,000.
down below is what gives them access to all those different libraries, and the
Right, and-
4,600 is just the internet access.
Right, and what I'm saying is the FiOS necessary for the library to access the consortium?
I
Because
don't
of
think so.
No, it's just the internet.
Okay.
But we're discussing it on a consortium level because we had to decide, is this going to be something we can all go in together on and divide up the cost or not? And to divide up the cost, that means I'm going to pay more because I'm going to carry a portion of someone else's bill because they don't have it yet. And I don't want to do that. I just want to pay for Merrimack. So,
Paul, did you want to say something? No, okay.
What Yvette's talking is, we have fiber that runs from this building down to Daniel Webster Highway, all the way out, and that's the fiber drop that they're talking about right on the pole
Okay.
outside the library. There's a fiber drop waiting to go into the library.
Okay. Anyone else? Oh, go ahead.
well, for that, the other costs in GMILKs, to answer your question, Councilor Boyd, it does mean that, yes, we are able to access the other libraries' catalogs, and how that's breaking down, there's a formula that is, how many card holders do we have, how many items do we have, how many computers do we have, staff side and the public side, that have Polaris, our catalog, because we pay for each seat.
Right.
So if we have a laptop with Polaris on it, with our catalog staff side, we're going to pay more for that. So, but there's a subcommittee that figures out the formula dues, and then it gets divided up.
So regardless of dial-up versus FiOS, it's not going to matter.
No, but what we're hearing from First Light is the FiOS is going to be better for us. It'll be faster, but it'll be.
It's the ability to transmit information quickly from point A to point, and I get that.
Mhm.
I get that. The question would be is how many communities are in the consortium right now?
I think it's 13, 12 or 13.
So if something like that were to come to fruition, and let's say it was altogether for 13 communities to participate, $13,000, let's just say, based on the numbers, it'd be cost effective to participate and have them use their FiOS system if it was at $13,000, because really your only rate of payment is going to be $1,000, or is it prorated based on the size of the community?
Those are two kind of different things. the FiOS line would be cheaper for us to change from cable to this line because it already exists in Merrimack.
Right,
For
get
us,
that.
that's better.
I get that.
So that's a separate thing than our participation in dues with the whole consortium. Those are two different figures.
Right, so, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought from what I understood from you, that there was conversations at the consortium level to look at FiOS as a part of that particular fee. So what I'm saying is it's conceivable with the 13 communities that participate, that depending on how it's able to be structured, that conceivably the 41,000 might actually be 42 or 43 because you're paying an extra amount of money for that particular technical component. It's being, included as a part of your consortium fee, as opposed to paying X amount of dollars for the consortium, then having to go out on the market and buy something that's compatible for the database that you're trying to access. Am I making myself clear?
Yes.
Okay.
I might have made myself unclear to you, and I apologize for
That's
that.
okay.
But the last time the board discussed this, the possibilities were so uneven in each community that one community doesn't have the possibility yet the way we do.
Right.
So for us, it's cheap. We drop the line, and our rates change, and we can go to something faster for cheaper. But for another community, they'd have a real, because we have, Wyndham, what do they have? They're out further out than we are. What about Salem? What do they have? For some of these communities, it was a real challenge, and they didn't like the idea. So we had discussed making this a group purchase, dividing it based on that formula we always use, which is usually population, holdings, things
Yep.
like that. And then that just became so expensive, especially for us, because for us, to do it individually was so much cheaper.
You were help paying for other towns
Right,
that needed more.
Right.
Honestly, on a consortium, when we have discussions on a board level, there are lots of things that we talk about that are shared services that might not benefit all of the libraries, but on a whole will benefit most of the libraries. And I think as a director, I'm learning when do I want to be consortial and when do I need to kind of dig in and go, not best for me. And it's different every conversation. This was one where we talked about it and then we all went no. Those of us who had it easier, we said no. The other libraries that might have benefited certainly from having FiOS, but then we'd have to share that cost, and it wasn't a good deal. So that's kind of where that is.
That answer?
Yep, thank you, Madam Chair.
Dan?
More of a comment just for all of us to know, because I was curious. I asked Eileen, what was it like 2 or 3 years ago? Because sometimes when you're just given the rough number for the budget, you kind of overlook it as that maybe what we've been paying. But 2013, it was around $30,000. So to your point that you're not a computer expert, you just pay the bill. So just another comment. We have a technology committee that sometimes, that has looks for things. Maybe we could get some help from our own technological people within town and see there might be a better plan out there. As we all know, technology is constantly changing, and maybe that 41 grand gets. There's another provider out there that could be offering it for 20.
Wait a minute.
It just
Let's see, that's two different
Wait a
things.
minute.
Yeah.
it is two different things.
Yeah.
I'm making the comment that this year the number was 41 grand, but 2 years ago it was 30 grand.
But that's the consortium, not the internet.
Right,
That's right. That's right.
yeah, so,
So the
We can't,
So the technical
technology
stuff-
committee wouldn't be able to help with the
Well-
consortium.
No,
Oh,
but they may, because they're the technology committee with their expertise and their jobs and everything, they maybe point to other companies. They may be an advisory, they may be the right people to ask, hey, is there a better way to do this? Who else is out there? What other private companies are out there who are offering services?
Counselor Dwyer, can I speak to that?
Sure.
Because actually, that's an excellent point, because a couple of years ago, Paul had said to me, we've got a drop outside. He said, there's a drop outside the
Yep.
poll. Why don't you talk to the technology committee? And the consortium wasn't there yet.
Yep.
I don't know why. And we have met with the technology committee about email address. We moved the email addresses from the library holding them to having the government, you
Right.
know.
And I'm not saying after you investigate and find out, maybe that's what the cost is to have the service that you want. I wouldn't question that. It just seems it is such a large number. It might be something where you really could be looking at saving quite a bit of money if there's a cost-saving solution.
Yeah, no, we're always
I'm
interested
not
in...
claiming I know it, the answer.
We're always looking for ways to save us money. Librarians are very good with being very creative with that. But, you know, the amount that you're looking at is the consortium dues, and there's a lot that goes into that we want to protect. You know, looking at, you know, changing First Light, going from the cable service that we have to running FiOS. As I understand it from my board, that should save us money, but it's not in effect yet. You know, it's something that we want to go to. Merrimack wants to go to. So,
Tom?
Yeah, as a matter of personal curiosity, I'd like to see how they divvy up the money. What algorithm they use to divide up the money.
yeah,
We tried.
Oh, wait a minute.
that's some kind of higher math that I've asked for before. I can
Yeah,
ask
last
again.
year
I
we
did.
asked
I
last year.
asked last year.
They are a public body.
Right to know.
I will ask again. I'll ask again. See what happens.
No, but Tom just said they were public.
If they are made up of all public entities, they can't dive behind it because the municipal association went to court on the issue and lost, trying to protect themselves. Okay? Public body is a public body.
Well, as a board member, I want to know. You know, it shouldn't be withheld from me because
So make me the bad guy.
There.
No, I wouldn't do that to you. I can be a bad guy all by myself.
Yeah, I would like to see how what
Okay.
calculation they use to
Tell the
divide it
town
up, because
council's asking.
there's a whole bunch of other,
That may not be the best way.
there's a
I'll
whole
just
bunch
say-
of other.
Might
well,
backfire.
What are they trying to do, hide behind the fact that they're libraries and they don't have to answer to us or anything like
No,
that?
no. It may be an individual in the position who is a little protective of the dues. I don't want to speculate.
Okay.
But I'll ask. You know, I'll ask.
I mean, we get one
I asked last year.
for a cost allocation for our highway.
Mm-hmm.
We get cost allocation for the schools from the state on how they, you know, the so-called Augenblick, what is it now, Augenblick 32?
Yep.
So, how they divvy up the state money to go to the school districts. And the county does the same thing, and most other multiple NRPC
Okay.
breaks it up into different calculations. So, I mean, yeah.
I'm so glad you all want to be.
So it'd be
back.
nice to know if there's some,
Do you want to come talk to my husband too?
No, if you're having a hard
kidding,
time
just
and the
kidding.
person is not being forthcoming, we have other avenues that I have connections up at the state that will reinforce the issue with the person, so to speak.
Okay. If I need to bring out the big guns. I know
Just
who to
one
call.
thing. I think that if somebody's paying $41,000 for something, all you have to do is just pick up the phone and say, I want to know, or
Yeah.
you're not getting the money. So, seriously.
Yeah.
It's $41,000. I don't know.
because if they're
It's not a-
basing it on population, the populations have been pretty stagnant for the last several years.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, that piece doesn't quite work.
Okay.
Yet your share of that has gone up a third.
Yeah.
In 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, now part of it, you know, I think in our formula right now, we had to add a van delivery. We had to add 2 van deliveries. I probably never brought it up with you all. So we have this van system with the state. And that means if you're requesting a book from Concord, then it'll get on the state van and come down to Merrimack in a couple of days. The van service was cut because of whatever was going on with the state budget, and this was a couple years ago. And so the GMOX board voted to add another courier van. So now we call it the state van and the courier van when we're talking in library land. So we can keep the two van systems separate in our conversations. So the board hired a courier van, and that is more frequent deliveries because we want to move GMILK's materials between the GMILK's libraries efficiently and not wait on the state. So that is a cost that has increased for us. But still, I think breaking down with a formula and then also seeing how much of that is the van, that might help you, understand what this means for us when we're doing
That's
business.
an additional cost
Sure.
that wasn't part of it before.
No, that definitely was added, and that was added since I've been the director. And then we had to change to a new company because the other one wasn't really delivering the right way, and then their rates increased because of gas or
Not this year.
not this year. No, this year the gas is going down. No, we have a nice company now. We like everything's very efficient now. But that was an increase. That would be account for probably some of the jump. But I'll get that. I'll get that for you.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions on this part, or we'll just keep moving?
No, as usual, out of a $1.1 million budget, we're wrangling over,
5,000.
yeah, two, slightly less than probably 0.5%.
I just wanted to know the difference in the internet providers, that's for sure. Innocent question.
I'm sorry. I wish I was more prepared for that. I'm
Sorry.
trying. We are increasing a little bit with outreach and marketing under advertising 8420. The board would like to have me, I would like to have me do more outreach. And so some of this is postage and marketing for that. We had a little bit of a change in the materials line, a slight increase. We wanted to increase the graphic novels and manga books in teen, so we broke out that type of book from the teen line. That was a request from my teen youth services librarian. She just wants to purchase more of that type of collection and build that collection more. There's a nice demand for it, yes.
What's a manga book?
I'm sorry.
Or is
Thank
that
you for
Manjaro?
calling me on that. That is Japanese cartoons. If Japanese comic books. Ridiculous.
This is 22 for the record.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
But my-
Dan, it's been around for a long time.
Oh, yeah, since at least the 80s.
I don't read it, but someone does. So we're going to add more.
My children
Yeah.
do.
Really
And
big with
since
the
my
teens.
son-in-law is a graphic novelist,
Okay. So really hot.
That's a good thing. He doesn't do Japanese graphic novels.
no, he does not.
Very popular.
I just don't read the manga. I don't get it. But that's okay.
Well,
Some
they
people love
have, there's video, there's graphic novels, there's the Comic Cons are the classic, that's what they are. They're all the characters from these, they're wildly popular, and it isn't necessarily, it's just, I learned about it when my kids were younger and they were interested in it, but adults are very interested in it as well. It's incredibly
Mhm.
popular, so I could see why you'd need to work on increasing that a little bit.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we just got a request for babysitting services for several Comic-Cons. So my daughter and son-in-law could attend.
That's awesome.
My daughter draws it.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So right now we have a manga closet. That's what we're making use of when we redid the teen area, and we have more traditional graphic novels, superheroes, and indie things right across from it. And she sees that there's a demand and would like to grow that, and I think that's a smart thing to do. We changed our magazine, our electronic and digital magazine hosting to Revistas instead of EBSCO. We're kind of saving a little bit of money and getting the same quality of service. So far, we have not seen an interruption in service. And this is something we actually were able to change this year. And just since we're doing it, we're just going to carry it over into next year. So that's why there's a little. I have read under the name of the company in my copy of the budget. So. Okay, another thing that you'll see here reflected is Overdrive. This is the downloadable books, audiobooks, electronic magazines that are offered through the state library. normally, in the past, before this budget, that cost has been absorbed by the trustee funds. But there's another increase. This is another area of the collection that is always going to increase. Publishers of electronic books charge libraries a lot more than they would a private citizen going to buy an ebook. For me, to buy an ebook, personally, it might be, I don't know, $10, $20 or something to download, depending on what it is. For a library, it's more like 80 or 90, because they know we're going to have multiple circulations and multiple checkouts. And then they expire. Some of them expire. So we added, in the consortium, we added 3M ebooks. This is only GMOX Libraries is something that's a cost share that we do, and that's listed here. But for Overdrive, because it's starting to increase, I thought it might be a good idea to actually have it reflected in the budget so people know what we're doing at the library and not just only in town funds where we have the service but nobody knows how it's getting paid for. And then we'd like to add streaming video. Just as another option for people, so that's something we're looking at, and we are putting it there. We're still talking to vendors to see what might be available for a library. If we go to Hoopla, we might be able to get streaming music and video together. Right now we have electronic music separate with Freagle Music, but we're trying to, again, cost save and how can we bundle some of these things. And it really depends on what's available from a vendor. And our budget is on one timeline and their development is on another timeline. So we're trying to anticipate what might be in development and ready to go by the time we hit July. So.
I'm sorry, Dan?
Do you have is there someone in the area, Hudson or Wyndham or somebody else that you know is doing, do you have a model to go by?
I believe Bedford has Hoopla. So that's another thing. When I look at services, if you want to go to Bedford and get a Bedford town card for whatever they charge for a non-resident card, then you could get that particular service that is only available to Bedford residents. I think we want to be competitive and offer the same kind of services that someone who might be visiting one of our neighboring communities and offer the same thing here. Why shouldn't Merrimack have streaming video or something super cool like that? Why not? There's probably lots of reasons why not, but I don't like to think about that. Well, let's start with the why not first. So there are other libraries that are offering this. The Kelly Library in Salem is offering IndieFlix. So if you're into indie movies, you can stream that, but it's only available for Salem residents who have the card. If I want to access that, I need to buy a Salem card. It's not through GMOX. That's not a shared cost. That's their individual idea. Same as Freagle Music. If someone wants Freagle Music, it's not a consortium thing. They have to get a Merrimack card. So.
Dan?
What's the price of a non-resident card?
For us, is $100. If someone outside of the consortium or outside of Merrimack wants to do it.
Thanks.
John?
So what's the content in, say, Hoopla?
Oh, I don't have their catalog on me, but it's a mix of movies. That's probably the best answer I can give you right now. It was stuff that looked interesting whenever we put this budget together. It's mixed.
John?
So I guess I'm confused. I don't have the update on the technology. You're talking about offering streaming video. Are you actually getting a license from this company that somebody in town could then effectively piggyback on to stream video to their item, or do you actually stream it down to Merrimack somehow and then have it available for people to?
We would buy the service. We would buy the subscription. Now, you would stream it to your device. You would get, they would have our permissions with our library card so that if I'm logging in with my Merrimack card, the company recognizes the permissions, and then I get it. I can watch whatever I want.
That they have available?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's how Freagle works now. So we have a couple of services like that where it's, with the 3M books, if you're not in the consortium and you live in Plastow. It's not offered through the state because that's the overdrive. You know, if you live in Plastow, you can access all of the overdrive materials, but if you want to get the 3M catalog, you have to have one of our cards, and then the permissions, you know, the company will set up the permissions through our consortium. Do it that way.
Okay. But you don't have that yet, you're just
No.
budgeting for potential costs. It might be around $3,000.
Yes.
Bill?
It's like Netflix or Amazon.com to some extent.
Yes.
Thank you.
The only thing I would be concerned about is the overlap between the services of what they're offering
Mhm.
in terms of content. That's why I asked the question.
Yeah, I mean, with 3M and with Overdrive, with the electronic books that exist, there's a little bit of overlap, but not a lot. For movies, we're still looking at vendors and trying to see what we can afford, you know, what might balance our collection, what might complement our collection right now. Because we still have, you know, DVDs, hard copy.
Please, don't go there with that.
Okay, I won't.
I've already fought that battle with your predecessors.
I like them.
All set? Go ahead, Yvette.
Okay. So, moving on, I'm on the last page. I'm on the second to last page. I'm on the last page. We had put in for a CIP to have the parking lot repaved and the front sidewalk where the entrance is, which is all broken up, also repaved in that project. And that's slated for next year. And then, just to kind of draw your attention, I don't know if this is in your copy of the budget. This is something Paul and I had talked about with the trustees wanted to show what portion or an amount that they're contributing to maintaining the library, parts of the collection, some of the building, and we had submitted that to Paul, so I don't know if you had taken that out. Oh, okay. So if you look at the bottom of the last page, it says grand total includes $3,500 from library trustees. My trustee board, you know, when you get a new person in the board and you're, even myself, I will say myself also, a new person touching the budget, the term library trustees funds in this, it was confusing to them about what was that? What funds was that talking about? It actually talks about the trustees of the trust funds and not their funds from fines or fees. So that was always confusing for them. And so they decided this time around, why don't we show, if we want to be transparent, why don't we show how much we're putting in and investing in the library materials and building repairs and equipment from our funds in, you know, working with the town budget. So Paul said this was actually not an appropriate place to put that, and it was very confusing, so I apologize for that. And but that was why these numbers are appearing here.
We're talking significant money, and it would just thrown off the budget. When we look at the budget as it's a $1.1 million budget, if I would have included those numbers, they would have increased their budget by $30,000, and then we would have taken it out by $30,000. I just felt we needed to talk about it as a group first, and maybe next year in the budget presentation to have that presented, because just to throw that down there, it would take, you know, from the $3,500, $33,000, it would lower their budget by $30,000, which in fact it's not lowering their budget by $30,000. It was confusing to look at it that way. So, but just to be aware that the trustee of trust funds have some accounts that they can spend out of that do not come in this appropriation, and the Secretary of State and the Attorney General has said that is perfectly fine, that they can spend these monies on anything they want to spend the money on, as long as it's related to library services.
Yeah.
It's not coming out of the tax.
It's not coming out of the taxes.
No, that's money that comes in as fines.
Right.
So we can't, you know, if we put it in the budget, we can't anticipate that everybody's going to pay their fines either. So we can't say, you know, we can count on this
Budget,
money.
yeah.
You know, pretty much it's
Right.
coming in, but you can't necessarily, you know, say that's going to come in. But we do, Yvette averaged out the last 3 years, and it was $33,000 that we spent out of fines accounts. So, just so that you're aware when you're looking at like
Well,
materials
Yeah, my
lines
son
and
has a big
things.
piece of that.
When my kids were younger, I owned a large chunk. It was 49,000 in 2014, 15?
No, that's what they said.
That's the average of the last 3 years, $33,000.
Yeah, no, I just looking back previous, there's a $49,000 a year?
Honestly, I think this year we're trying to track the fines and fees that the trustees get when there's a lost item or something late. We're trying to track it now. One of the things I've noticed the trustees are doing now are they're spending more out of their own line. The building, they kicked in money for a roof repair and for different building repairs. Usually it's materials. The fines go right back into materials.
That probably includes fundraising events too, right?
Fundraising is special account,
Oh,
it's a
different.
separate account,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, that's all just fines.
That's fundraising is
Okay,
really
I
the
don't know.
Friends, which are totally separate from us. I mean,
Okay.
they have an account called Special, which is donations,
Okay.
book
Okay.
sale, so
Right,
kind of
that's
fundraising
what I
like
was
that,
thinking,
yeah.
Jody?
So this money that's incoming, this isn't just from late fees and fines. The trustees of the trust funds, that's the group that typically, and Jack Balcom and Chris Christensen have been trustees. Is that what we're talking about, the same?
No, that's separate. We get
That's separate.
$3,500 a year.
It's a little under that.
Around that.
It's a little
It
under.
comes
year.
from
the
that
trustees
group
of the
trustees?
trust fund.
Yes,
That's like the $3,500 that's reflected here.
okay.
That's always been in this line, but my board wanted to be a little more transparent about what kind of money they're moving in and the kind of investment they're making in the library with their own fines and fees,
Eileen?
trustee money.
I'm assuming there is a trust fund that they get the $3,500 from the trustees of trust funds for every year, which is a different thing than what they're talking about right now. What they're talking about right now is they have the ability to spend some of the revenues that they get from other sources, and they go into a separate fund for that are under the auspices of the trustees of the library. So, for instance, copier fees, late fees, lost book fees, as they were saying, all those things come together and go into an account, and they have the ability to pull money out of that and use it for these various things.
Okay, so it's like a revenue
Yes.
account. Okay, that makes sense to me. Thank you.
Right, and there are stipulations on what we can use it on. Materials, equipment that's revenue generating, like a copier. We can spend it on building repairs. But there are certain things we can't spend that money on, so.
Got it, thank you.
Okay.
Which is very different than it used to be about 20 years ago, when they never wanted us to know how much was there. Because they never wanted to tell us how much they were putting back into the budget after we went through the budget process. So, thank you.
If you have a question, I'll answer. I think it's nice that I think myself and the board, I don't see why we can't share that information. It's public information. It comes out in the town report every year.
That's right.
So that's kind of all I have to say about this. I don't know if you have any other questions for me or for
Jody, and then Bill?
Thank you. I have questions regarding the differences between some of these building improvements and maintenance line items, and I don't know if you can answer, or if I need to go to Paul. Because I noticed last year's budget, there was building improvements or major repairs, and there was $15,000 last year, but there's nothing in the budget this year. And I'm just, maybe if there's a specific project that we're talking about, but I just trying to get a better handle on what would be considered a building improvement or major repair down compared to the capital reserve fund, and that's transfer to library building maintenance fund. And it looks like there's $35,000 in this year. And then we've got the parking lot paving sidewalk, we talked about that. but I don't understand the difference between the two, and I guess I'm wondering if there's a specific project that we're earmarking.
As you'll see in a lot of these different funds, you'll see capital reserve fund. When it says capital reserve fund, transfer to the maintenance fund, that means that we're putting it into our savings account. So we have looked at our capital reserve, our capital improvements plan, and started planning for various things that we need. So we're taking that money and putting it into our savings account
Okay.
for future purchases. When you see capital reserve fund purchases, it actually means taking the money out that you've already put in. So it's, and the $15,000, I think, was because they didn't have enough money in that account.
And then when you look at the capital reserve funds, they have other smaller projects that are not a capital reserve project, and that's where the 15 is. That could be painting the front door, or painting a room, or, you know, new carpet in an area, or new bookshelves in an area where they're renovating. They renovated the magazine room, and that could be part of that magazine room renovations. So it's smaller than a capital reserve
Okay.
fund.
But again, all the capital reserve funds have very specific
Right.
stipulations as to what they can be spent on. So
Okay.
these are things, I guess, that are outside of that. And we can, if you would like, we can actually give you a list of all of the capital reserve funds. And I think it would be good for all of us, and certainly for me, to see what the specific things for each of the capital reserve funds are.
That'd be
Because
great.
sometimes they're
Thank you.
confusing, especially the road ones.
Okay.
Okay.
So the $35,000 for the transfer to the library building maintenance fund, that's money that is going into the fund for a future capital project. Okay. And the building improvements or major repairs typically are smaller maintenance projects that wouldn't necessarily qualify for a larger capital project. Okay, I get it. Thank you very much.
So there was obviously something in 15, 16 that. We did do some
It's
repairs
this
on
year.
the roof.
Well, 15, 16 is this year. 53, that's 17 under capital reserve fund. 17,000 was the roof when we did the roof. And 10, we're doing, okay, so Paul had mentioned we redid the magazine area. So the magazine area is the Henderson room in the original building. It's now the teen area. And we moved all of the materials from that room to the window, and so now the magazine area is situated by the window, the north window. So that move, there was really no cost to cut into the $10,000. It was mostly staff hauling stuff and volunteers hauling books.
That's money that went into capital reserve.
Yeah.
We're looking at.
But the improvement in major
15,000.
repairs line
This is the
item
one
is
you're
larger than the capital reserve fund expenditure
but-
line item for 15, 16. So that, I don't know, that's why I guess it was confusing to me.
No,
That's the
10,000.
regular, but that's the regular building line for regular improvements.
Small projects that they're
mhm,
gonna do
mhm,
inside.
mhm.
They had several little projects that they wanted to do inside the library to move areas around. And they were small individual projects, and no one project was probably more than $5,000 or $6,000. It was
Right.
3 of them. You were
Right,
doing
because we're doing the electrical-
magazine, you were doing
yeah.
the magazine, you were also doing the reference area.
Yes.
Small projects that they were gonna do interior that didn't really meet the capital reserve limits. And that's why they budgeted through,
So cumulatively.
cumulatively, they added up to 15,000. There was
Okay.
several small projects
Right.
that they were looking
And-
at doing.
Right, and these are things that, I've submitted to Paul, and he'll advise me where it's supposed to go, and I'm just like, okay, well, for this room switch that we're talking about, part 2 is coming now, where we're going to actually have to have some things, additional electricity dropped on the main floor because of how we want the furniture to be rearranged so that we can create better seating for patrons and a better flow for the whole work area. So right now I've got 4 electrical poles that are kind of need to be shifted around, but I need to drop 3 more. So, yeah, the quotes came in, $5,000.
That is what that 15,000
Okay.
is for.
All
It's
right.
just small projects
Okay.
versus a roof, which was
Right.
$100,000,
Okay,
or paving the sidewalk, which is $45,000.
thank you.
Yeah.
Question, under wages 8104, for the summer library student intern, are we paying the individual $11 or $12 an hour? Because the way I read the budget book, at $11 an hour, should be allocated for $2,200, it reads $2,400, so I don't know if it's $11 or $12.
I think that's the 53rd week, but it's $11 an hour is what we would like to offer.
Summer
But it's a
intern.
$200
only
difference
20
for,
10 weeks.
Oh,
I think there was some talk about whether it's going to be $12 or $11 an hour, and because that's a fixed number in the spreadsheet. What do you want? You want
I think we were saying 11.
11, so it would be 22.
2,200 then.
Okay.
For now.
Just a general question. You've got a 9% increase in your budget this year. And presumably some of that is due to the 53rd week, about 15K, maybe more than that. And the parking, I'm not really sure. Is the 45,000 coming out of the fund? And we're putting 35 back in, so the additional cost is only 10,000 for this year, or?
So let's look at last year's, let's,
And that's without the 2.5% increase you were talking about, is 9% increase in your budget. It's just
okay,
a
this
step.
does not help me.
It's 55,000 in additional capital outlay.
Pardon?
Down here, there's $55,000.
Okay, so there,
Yeah. That's weird.
there was a 3.93% increase in operating funds, which part of that, which is, comes to $39,435. Part of that is the 53rd week of payroll, and probably there's another 10 for library materials, and what else we got, Paul? Okay, all right, so that's for operating. For library building repairs, that's a negative 15,000. And
And then the capital outlay is 55,000.
library, increase of $25,000. So, okay, so if you were to take the budget that I propose, if you were to take the budget that I proposed to you, and subtract out what their budget was last year, 1032743 is what it was last year, and you subtract out 1127178. There's a difference of 94,435. Is that correct, Paul?
Yeah.
Okay. So, so $45,000 of that is new, which is a capital reserve fund purchase, which will be coming from revenue. So you can subtract that $45,000 out of the bottom of the difference between the two. You can also subtract out $25,000 for the transfer to library building maintenance, because that's an additional amount, and then add back in $15,000 for the
It's the difference between
repairs. So if you take 94,435 minus the new $45,000 expense, which is revenue, expense neutral, revenue neutral. Subtract out the additional $25,000 that they have placed into the capital reserve fund, and add back, what's that?
I don't know why you subtract the 25 out. That's an additional tax-based cost. To put an additional $25,000 into the bank, that's coming from
Oh, okay.
taxes, right? I mean,
I guess you were just asking me why what the increases were. So one of them is, if you took, I guess I took it a little too far. So if you took 94,435 and subtracted out $45,000, which is fair because it's coming from capital reserve funds.
Right.
You have 49,435. 49,435, and you want to divide that by 1032743 equals 4.7%.
Right, and some amount of that, 15K or 20K or whatever is from the 53rd week salary, or
Yes, and the $10,000 is for additional library materials. And
Well, what you're saying is 25,000 of that is also going, I understand it's tax-based, but
Right.
that's going back in the capital reserve.
right, exactly.
So that would add 1%.
Where are you getting the $25,000?
The difference, if you look at the capital reserve fund,
I am.
it was already 10,000 from last year.
I get that.
It's going up 35, so there's a
so
difference.
there's
of
additional
25,000.
25,000 going into the fund this year that
That's
wasn't
an
going in
increase-
last year.
It's an increase from the previous year. And we're talking about an increase in the percentage of the total.
Okay, I wouldn't have looked at it that way, but okay.
But that helps us understand that's part of the increase.
See, I look at the 35 as 35 is being put into that fund.
That's true, but it's only,
He's comparing last year to this
So many
year.
people talking, excuse me, please.
It's true, but it's 25,000 more than they did last year. Last year they put in 10,000. This year they're putting in 35, which accounts for an increase. We still have to get taxpayer money for it. It's $25,000 more than the previous year. So it accounts for an increase. If it was 10,000, it would be an increase, even though it's still putting 10,000 in.
But 10,000 was allocated last year and budgeted.
It's the
So my question is, why do I care about it in this budget? Somebody needs to explain to me why I care about it in this budget.
It just helps us understand why there was a 9% increase. Part of that percentage of the increase came from a $25,000 increase from last year into the capital reserve. What percent? 1, whatever it would be. But obviously didn't happen.
No, we'll talk about it later. Please, thank you.
and I guess to follow on, the 35,000 that we're putting into the capital reserve fund is to cover future expenses anticipated, capital funds? Do we remember or know what those were?
We kind of, when we did the roof, we depleted the fund down to zero.
Yeah.
So we're trying to get back up with the fund, and that's for, there's sprinkler system issues, there's HVAC issues in that building. And those were the two major things that were put on the table of, in the tune roughly about $100,000. There's also a key card system that they're getting better quotes on for access into the areas of staff areas versus public areas to keep security. So those are the three things that we're looking at over the next 5 to 7 years.
Okay. HVAC is still an ongoing issue?
Yes. Yeah, do you want to know more about it, or?
Pardon?
Would you like to know more? I mean, the units, the individual units are, okay. If I want to have heat or AC in my office, the panel is outdated versus the technology that actually exists. So I call to have this thing fixed so that I can have one or the other, and they have to find a technician who's trained in the new thing, because the parts in my system at the library don't exist anymore.
Okay,
So,
never mind.
so, huh? Oh, it's
I mean,
fine.
we all know you went through a situation this summer where you had no AC, and it was
Yeah.
hotter than heck in there
In-
for a
in
long
my
time.
office,
And you
too.
put a new
It was-
huge unit outside by the street.
That
That's not
was-
what you're talking about. You're talking about the
I'm
internal.
talking, oh, yeah, so that had to be replaced, but that was replaced a couple years ago, the chiller
And
barrel.
it should be good for several years.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
But now,
these are separate issues.
now we look at the individual panels throughout the building.
Yeah, you know, like we have in Town Hall, the heating units that are disguised as windows, or windows disguised as heating units. Because you might as well have a window there.
Got it.
That's right.
Well, Paul will ask me for, just get a number from the vendor to replace the whole thing. The whole HVAC, the whole sprinkler. And so I call the vendor, and they're like, oh, you don't want to know the number. No, I want to know the number. Why do you people not want to tell me these numbers? I want to know. I want to know the number. No, you don't want to know. And we wouldn't recommend replacing the whole thing at once. We recommend piecemeal. It's like, well, that's not what I'm
Yeah.
asking
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, right,
'Cause it
exactly,
keeps us
sure, because
employed
you
for the next
make a
10
little money
years.
every time. So, we estimated.
Okay,
Um,
thanks.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, next, town clerk, tax collectors.
Tab number 24, town clerk, tax collector. Good evening.
Hello. So hopefully, I can answer all of your questions if you have any. This year's budget is pretty straightforward as compared to budgets that I've submitted in the past. There are no new programs, no new personnel. Generally, there are a few minor increases, and most of them are all related to election cycles this year. In 2016, there are 4 election cycles. As you all know, November is coming, and it's a very busy time for our department. We have asked for a temporary increase in hours. One of our part-time positions is eligible to pick up some extra hours, and we have one on-call part-time person in our office that typically mans the express window at tax time. This person does come in during employee absences, if there's an illness, things like that, and helps us keep up with the workflow. We are planning to utilize this person for elections as well. Other changes in the budget have to do with postage line item, and that is primarily to account for absentee ballots. They cost just about $1 a piece to mail. We are expecting an increase of about $2,500 this year to be mailed, and as you all know, postage costs have gone up, so with the certified mail that we have to send for tax notices and dog notices, that accounts for some of that as well. Dues and fees, I've asked for an increase in dues and fees. This is primarily to cover Brenda, the deputy's position. When I am not in the office, if there's an urgent alert, if there's an email tree, if there's something that has gone out, it comes to the dues paying member, me. So it sits there if I'm on vacation for a week. She doesn't get the alert unless somebody makes her aware of it from a neighboring town. In addition, I'm also trying to have Brenda take a more active role with the City and Town Clerks Association and the Tax Collectors Association. I think you have heard me say this many times. We're under one roof, but we do 2 jobs. I rely heavily on the deputy, and would like her to take a more active role. She's been active in the education for the joint certification program. I would like her to start coming on board with some of the boards. It is a benefit, a tremendous benefit to the town of Merrimack to have somebody who is actively attending those meetings and being involved. So that's an increase for that. The other minor increases, travel and meetings in education and training primarily is to reflect that all personnel now have to go to training. The DMV offers training twice a year now, so we're trying to get 6 and 7 people to training twice a year with the DMV. There's travel cost and registration fees for some of these things that they have to go to. With the additional part-time person, those increases reflect sending all staff. The maintenance equipment line item went up due to uncontrollable annual support contracts, and we're registering more dogs, so there is a slight increase in dog tags. Other than that, that is the budget, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions? Paul, do you have anything, or Eileen?
Nope, just to back Diane up on the dogs, we see it on the revenue side too. So I think we are registering more dogs.
More dogs. Any questions? Dan?
Just an update for us, but maybe the public too, on a potential paying with credit cards.
Credit cards, yes. We actually, you, the board, approved us to be able to take electronic payments about 2 years ago. We went online with credit cards. We are anticipating, we're actually in the process right now of putting our final plan together. We had hoped to have it shortly after the first of the new year. However, with law changes and this primary election, we've fallen behind. And right now, Brenda and my goal is hopefully sometime February, maybe as late as early March. But right now, you probably don't know, we've been working on primary since October. And we're doing now primary and town meeting simultaneously. So this year, we will have credit cards at the counter and at the window and online for motor vehicles. I'm hoping by early March at the latest. My goal is mid-February, but seeing how we're shorthanded right now, as well as doing these 2 elections, it's coming. We do have 1 check right now, which was
Oh, that's right, too.
preparing to go on credit cards, and the public loves it.
Yeah.
They absolutely love it. It is a time saver, which again has been helpful for us because we are down one of our part-time positions right now, but the public loves it. One of the things that we've been trying to do is just remind them that we aren't the DMV, because now with the 1 check, a lot of people tend to think it's you're the DMV, because they pay all of their money to the town, and the town sends the DMV their share. But other than that, it's been phenomenal.
Eileen?
And that's every day, right? You have to send the DFB their check every day.
Every day, yes. We give finance a slip, a remittance slip, and then Tammy in the finance department has to cut a check every single day for
They
the
don't want
DMV.
you to get any interest, even though it's 0.1%. Jody, and then Bill?
Thank you. The tax window is great.
Thank you.
And that's a service, and it's fantastic, and I think makes the painful job of paying your taxes just a little bit easier. And you've got such a wonderful lady who mans that too, so it's always nice to see her. But and the e-registration is great. So I think that we are really moving along with the services that we're offering to people and trying not to have them stand in line any longer than they have to. I had a question, and it's not specifically for the this budget. I noticed it in several budgets, so I thought, Eileen, I might ask you and Paul. I noticed under telephone cost allocation that there was a requested amount by the department, and almost every single budget, the amount in the town manager's budget was less. So I wondered what you guys knew about telephone cost allocation that everybody else didn't.
Well, it's my department. my department does all the cost allocations for telephone for the whole town. So when we started this budget process, we had a current contract with our current provider. And we were in the midst of a situation occurring at the PD, and I picked up the phone because of they wouldn't give the information to our technology person, so I had to call because my name was on the account. And in calling to try to switch it over, I said to the woman, you know, I'm going out to bid, so can I have my information? And all of a sudden, they came in and cut my bill by a third. So that's what the difference is. We threatened to go out to bid, and they came and she gave me a price. And to be honest with you, when she gave me the price, I kind of knew what was out there already because we have vendors that call all the time. And I kind of said to them, so what can you do for me? And when they came in and cut it by a third, we said, it's a good deal. So we signed up for a 2-year deal.
Terrific.
So that's where the difference is.
I figured there was something because it was in every single budget, so thank you.
Bill?
Paul or Eileen or Diane, under postage 8230, can you explain the $4,500 difference between the line item that's listed there versus the department and town manager amount? Is there a missing allocation there?
It's $31,500, which was asked for. What happened was that was a carryover that wasn't caught between Diane or ourselves when we did it. What they did is they hit the line itself and they didn't go to the left and change that number.
So 31.5 is correct?
31.5 is the number. Postage has gone up too for
Yeah.
people that don't realize it. We got hit with an increase in postage too.
And just publicly, thank you. The town clerk staff is without doubt the most pleasant and professional people I've ever encountered, and I've seen them working when the lines have been, wrapping down the corridor back out to the open door, and they have a smile, and they're in there, and they're very diligent and very quick. So would you please
We will
thank
pass that
please
along
thank
to
them
staff.
along. I appreciate everything that they do
Absolutely.
for the town. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Finley, did you have a question?
Actually, it's kind of a philosophical thing for me on the phones. If I'd been getting gouged by a third, wouldn't it be better to go out to bid? I don't know.
Our contract just ended. We were underneath a contract.
Okay.
So our contract was just ending. I had a month left on the
All
contract.
right, so we were just fulfilling that.
We were just
Okay.
fulfilling our contract with them, and I knew I was coming up to the end, and I wanted to see what they would do.
Okay. Thanks.
You want your money back, don't you?
Well, I mean, it appears that we were getting gouged, but I don't know. Maybe the services were a little different. I don't know, but it was substantial.
Utilities do.
That was a substantial
gouge people.
change. Yeah,
I'm sure it's for us, too. Any other questions?
you're right. I got Comcast, I know.
Okay, thank you very much. I guess we're all set.
Great. Have a nice
Thanks,
evening.
guys.
Next, we're going to have community development, tab number 21. Mr. Thompson?
Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm going to keep this very short, very sweet.
Love you.
For the,
The question is, will we?
that is
Yeah,
always
that's
the
what the
question at
problem
these
is.
meetings, isn't it? The budget that's proposed for the Community Development Department and as finalized by the town manager, the significant difference you see between this year and last year is the capital reserve expenditure for the GIS project, which will be for the flyover and the development of photometric mapping, a new base mapping for the town's GIS system. If that project were not encountered as part of this budget, my budget difference from last year is $987. So it is a level-funded budget, and that also takes into account the 53rd payroll week. So it's about as level as I could possibly make the budget this year.
Thank you, Tim.
Any questions?
But the only question I had, you answered in your response. I was wondering what the 135 was, but it's the GIS. Now, is that going to be all done?
Yes.
Nice. Good. What, it's been
This
3 years?
is, as you are all well aware, the town established a GIS Capital Reserve Fund a couple of years ago. We're now going into the third payment into the system of $65,000 after a $10,000 initial payment 2 years ago. In talking with our GIS consultant, we actually think that we'll be able to achieve the project for less than the 130 that's proposed to be for the capital reserve expenditure. And if that's the case, we'll certainly keep that money into the reserve for our future projects.
Excellent. Okay, anything, Paul, Eileen, anything? No? Anyone else? Bill?
Thank you. Just $2,000 drop on the consultants for the master plan implementation. What additional upcoming this year is needed to fulfill the master plan?
At this stage, the majority of the work that I see upcoming for the master plan implementation are things that are going to be done in-house by staff. Last year's number for master plan implementation anticipated utilizing funds for NRPC to work on the bike ped plan. As we're all well aware, that project was stopped, and the committee has suspended its activities. So that money, not having to move forward with that, was one of the reasons why I was able to reduce that line. I've also shifted some of that money because I have 2 aging copiers in my department that I have a feeling are going to need some significant maintenance and upkeep. So we decided there was a better use of our funds to shift that money to those lines for this upcoming year. But in terms of economic development projects, I do anticipate that I'll be working with Paul and the folks from virtual town halls and schools to finally get the economic development section of the website with the real estate listing project incorporated into the town's website in this coming year, this coming fiscal year, I should say. We'll also be working on a economic revitalization overlay district that would encompass the former Merrimack Hotel site and the former Shaw site, at least initially. The planning board had given my staff and I the go-ahead to start working on that a few months ago, and now that we're through the medical marijuana changes and the other things that have happened over the course of the last 6 to 12 months, we're starting to look at those types of activities. We've also had, following a joint meeting with the Conservation Commission and the Planning Board, some regulatory amendments to bring some consistency into the regulations in terms of what the Conservation Commission typically requires and requests of developments to codify those into the regulations as well.
Good deal. Thank you as well to your team for what they do day in, day out. So, thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, Eileen?
This has nothing to do with the budget, but I didn't get a chance to give them the update on the Anheuser-Busch thing, and it's good news. Some of you know, Tom M., I'm sure knows, but they're moving forward with their project, so I'll let
Yeah.
And it's 20,000 square feet larger.
Than previously.
Then previously approved, yes.
And even though it says cellar, it's above ground. It's a term of art in the brewing business.
Brewing, yeah.
Sure. The original proposal that was from, I want to say, March or April of last year, was intended to initially be an expansion to their can line at Anheuser-Busch. They had not officially gotten the go-ahead from corporate in St. Louis to go ahead with that project. However, the plant manager and his team wanted to move forward to get that project approved, knowing that there might be some projects that were coming down from corporate. What they're now looking to do is a specialty brewing expansion, given the various smaller breweries that they've acquired, microbrews, certain specialty types of beers. They'll actually be starting to brew some of those here locally in Merrimack, as well as some of their other facilities across the country. So that's the initial phase of their expansion. The second phase would be some additional packaging and warehousing expansion. So in total, we're looking at about 72,000 square feet of new building additions at the facility.
Nice. Did you want to add anything? No.
And since this is one of those beginning of the year opportunities, I just wanted to fill in the board on just an update. I do track the number of project meeting agenda items that go forth in front of the two boards, the Planning and Zoning Board, each year. I also track the staff time spent staffing those land use board meetings. For 2015, there were 112 project agenda items between the two boards, and my staff all spent about 77 hours staffing the Planning Board, Zoning Board, the Bike Ped subcommittee while it was still in existence, as well as EdCAC. I do not track the time I spend in front of you folks, however. It is, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, brother, it's getting
But
it's getting kind of deep in here.
I actually have, I went back all the way to 2011, which was my first year here in Merrimack. Going back to before I was hired, the number of hours that have been spent by staff staffing land use boards has gone from 140 and a half hours in 2011, 104 in 2012, 77 and a half in 2013, 115 last year, and 77 this year. The number of projects is actually relatively consistent year to year, at least the last 2 years. However, I will give some credit to the planning board and the zoning board. They have bumped up their efficiency in handling some of the more complex agenda items. So I think that's one of the reasons why we've seen a slight decrease in terms of staffing hours. And I think a secondary reason for that is now that as my staff continues to mature and gain experience, I'm not having to send two staff members to board meetings. We're generally sending one staff member to each of the meetings as well, which helps cut down on the amount of staff time being spent at these meetings.
And with 112 projects, 77 hours doesn't seem very substantial, so that's really good.
That includes a lot of items that are continued without discussion, but it's every agenda item that was specific for a project over the course of the year. And if you're interested, they're also mapped on the town's website as well. Through the planning board and the zoning board page, I have the last 3 years' worth of projects located by Google Map.
So if we're ever wondering what you do.
If you're ever wondering where things are happening, those maps are a great tool.
So, Tim, is that 77 hours time spent in the meetings? Or
That is time only spent in the meetings, yes.
Okay, so there's a lot of time still that supports those meetings, right?
Absolutely. That doesn't include the time we spend preparing memos and having meetings with developers and staff and applicants, real estate people. So there's a lot of time that goes into it outside of those meetings. And it also doesn't count the 2 to 2.5 hours that I spend sitting in my office from 4:30 until the meeting starts as well. So.
Wham, Would you like to speak to that, Heather?
Working, of course.
Well, if you lived in Merrimack, you wouldn't have to worry about it. Ouch. He started it.
I did.
Any other questions? Nice job, Tim.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Media, tab number 32. Good evening.
All right. I don't want to take up too much of your time tonight, but
Well, that's kind of you.
that seems to be the theme tonight, right? The budget you have in front of you is nearly identical to last year's budget. It's there's no additional hires. There's no major renovations to any of our facilities here at Town Hall. We're really just cycling through equipment that needs to be replaced, namely our cameras and switcher in the public access studio. That's approaching 6 years of life here at Town Hall. And we're noticing an increase in programming, not because it's an election year, but that's part of it. So it's a good time to replace that equipment. We see an increase in shows being taped. Aside from cameras and switcher, there's actually noted on the in the budget, there's line items for each sort of project that we have happening. I believe what you're looking, you might see media staff equipment. Yeah, that is actually supposed to be lighting and furniture. That's something I sent to Paul this week, and he just said I could bring it up during the presentation. But that's what was submitted, which was $10,000, and that's for the other side of the public access studio. The cameras and switcher is obviously in the control room, and the lighting and furniture would be in the studio itself. There's a focus on the public access end of things in this year's budget, just because we've spent the past few years making upgrades to this room and also the memorial conference room next door. So this year's budget reflects public access side, which also includes our editing systems in our media classroom, also approaching 5 to 6 years of life. All this equipment was actually originally purchased when we first moved over from the school to Town Hall. So now we've cycled through those pieces of equipment entirely, and we're replacing the editing systems. And that's generally it. I have uses of and how people use this equipment, if you want me to go into that, but I'm not sure if it's entirely necessary. That's your call.
It's basically a flat budget, like Nick said, and it's paid by cable franchise fees, so it's paid by that little charge you get on your Comcast bill.
But again, we have to reflect that on the budget,
Budget,
right?
right.
And you'll also see, over the past maybe 3 years or so, we have been receiving more than sufficient amount of money to fund the media fund with the cable franchise fee, and we've been putting more and more of that cable franchise fee into revenue, into the general fund. And you'll see that when you come to the revenues.
Jody?
I don't have a question, just a comment. Just thank you guys. Sitting here till 10, 11 o'clock sometimes, that has to be god-awful boring for you. But also...
Not always.
No, these guys are great.
You're supposed to
but,
say never.
Especially when we asked, and it was kind of last minute, for you to video the scoping, the FERC scoping meeting for
Yeah, that's right.
NED pipeline, and you were awesome. And
Oh, yeah.
people, we all appreciate it. I mean, I've worked with you, Nick, for years now, so I know what you guys do, and I'm so appreciative of it. But people watch live, people watch the recordings, and so many people wanted that video from that meeting. So I just want you to know how much it's appreciated. That you go above, that to me that was going above and beyond, and that was a long night, and you had a couple of snafus that you had to try and work through, but people wanted to watch that video, and people have been watching that video. So I just wanted to thank you guys, because that's a huge service that you're doing to the town of Merrimack, so thank you.
Dan?
Nick, what year did you start here?
Well, I started here in a slightly different capacity in May of 2001.
2001. Wow.
Yeah, I was about 80 pounds lighter, and I had
You're
significantly
darker
more
hair, too.
pepper in my hair.
Yeah.
But Nick and I actually share an anniversary date.
We all do that.
We were
And I had
hired on
inevitable.
October 31st,
Oh.
11
Right.
years ago.
And I came back as department head.
You're almost considered one of the old dogs around here now.
That's sad.
I just want to
No,
say...
not with my role here. I love my role here, but it's
No, you've been
I guess
here.
I-
You've been here
that-
that long.
just the old part.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry about that part.
I thought it was the dog part you just...
But to kind of echo Jody's comments,
No.
you and your whole staff. I mean, and I know people. We have just a great staff. You guys do an awesome job, and just your flexibility and your enthusiasm for people to come in. We have such an open studio for any resident to come on and they want to talk and have a message to say over our airways. These guys just make it a pleasure to work with. So thanks again for the job that you guys do.
Absolutely. Thank you. Well, speaking of dogs, I should point out that one of the things that we were proud of this year, aside from covering that FERC meeting that everybody wanted to see, but Holly Morales and the Friends of the Merrimack Dog Park actually used our cameras, used our editing classroom, worked with our staff to create that PSA that ended up getting $25,000
That's right.
towards the dog park. And I know Justin worked close with Holly, and I made sure that they had everything that they needed to get that done. So we're very proud of that project for the old and young dogs in town.
Nice.
We're going downhill fast, aren't we?
Yep.
I think it was 10 o'clock for crying out loud.
Any other questions? None. Well, thank you very much.
Thank
Nick.
you for the kind
Thanks,
words.
guys.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, general government. Poor Yvette got the worst of us tonight. Number one.
So,
Tab number one.
general government. There are a couple items in general government that I'd like to bring to the board's attention, council's attention. The first one is compensated absences. As you'll see, that is a decrease from prior years.
What's the numbers?
01018142.
Yep.
It's a decrease from prior years. Basically, what I do and my staff does is we go and look at the New Hampshire retirement systems, who's eligible to retire. And because generally accepted accounting principles say that if they're eligible to retire, you got to record it. So we take it, look at the ages, look at if they're retired, and bring it forward. This year, we're projecting about 3 people who are going to be eligible to retire, and usually staff turnovers in the 6 to 7 range, so we budget for that also.
How many people retired this past year? You might not know it, just a guess.
rocking chairs in my office right now,
Are they trying to give you a hint or what?
Well, that was
I
for
wanna-
you.
I think 5. I think 5. I think
Total?
total of 5
Seems like there
retired.
was more.
Seems like there was a bunch.
Yeah. Well, it seemed they all happened like boom, 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 boom. But
The last 2
two from one from equipment maintenance, one from highway. 2 from equipment. Sorry, 2 from equipment maintenance. 2 from the PD.
I want to say like there were 7 or 8.
3 and Joe. Yes, yeah, there was 3. I'm going down. Yeah. He's 2. Yeah. There's 3 from PD. There's 2 from equipment maintenance. And then there was 1 other, so 6. 6 right now
Okay.
that I could recall.
Okay, but you, so,
Solid waste, or, not solid waste, sewer?
so you're projecting, you're projecting fewer people.
Fewer people. The next one is,
Go ahead.
Every 6 years, there's a turnover, Paul, but what is that?
s-
Why does that go into compensate? Oh, absence.
absences.
Yeah, okay.
We gotta, the next line?
What compensated absences is when people retire and they leave the town. I know that you do, but I'm not sure that Jody does.
We talked about it.
You do, okay. So when they retire, when they're eligible to retire, we set money aside for them so that when they do retire, they don't have big chunks of money coming out of the police department that particular year or some other department. So we save up for it when they're eligible to retire. So everything is kind of even. So we accrue those things into an account.
That's the earned absences and things
Right.
like that.
That's right. Mhm.
Yeah.
But the turnover doesn't relate to retirements, that's turnover of
That's
employees.
turnover
that have built up
employees,
some
right, but
accumulation.
if they accrue any leave,
Right,
you gotta pay them out.
right, no, so
By
but that's,
DOL
Sick
laws.
leave,
right.
vacation time,
Right.
et cetera, et
So,
cetera.
so that's, because that was one of my questions, was what is turnover? So,
That's-
all right, so the retirement, it's basically so you avoid a spike
Correct.
any one
As a
particular
result-
year.
As a result of
Because,
retirement.
yeah, the school district can't say, they have to pay out at that time, and some years it's big. So that's,
And we do pay out at that time, but we do,
save up
we
for it.
set it all aside each year in a bank
Okay.
account, basically,
Okay.
and prepare for
thank
it.
you. And, yeah, and
You're putting it in
turnover was my
general
other
government,
question,
not
so
putting it
thanks.
in PD or fire or something. like
Right.
that. So they don't see
Exactly.
spikes in
That's right, yes.
their budgets.
Did you have a follow-up question?
No, but that answered my question, thank you.
The next line is 0101-8293, legal other. The $150,000 is constant. However, this year, because we were negotiating 6 union contracts, we felt prudent that we might need to take an extra $25,000 for legal advice from during the negotiations. We have discussed it in-house, and we feel that not knowing what the intervenor status is going to be and how much need for legal advice during the next coming year on the project, we felt it would be prudent to put the $25,000 from the extra legal for the negotiations into the Kinder Morgan portion of that. So that's why we flatlined the legal at $150,000.
Bill?
Paul, do we think that's enough?
Your guess is as good as mine. Like I said, I don't know how much we're gonna need right now. We've spent, since the beginning, I think we spent around $50,000.
I was going to say, because
It was in the
what's there
packets.
is more than.
I mean, I asked the question only because, Joanna can easily, anything that needs to be intervened from from a documentation standpoint, can easily be faxed or mailed down to FERC, but what if she has to go down to Washington DC? I mean, I'm assuming that's something that we would assume. I mean, assuming that she needs to go down to Washington DC. I mean, that to me would be, I've always operated under that assumption that once we got to intervenor status, if we were granted intervenor status, that there might be the need for her to go down and represent the town of Merrimack before FERC. It's not like FERC's coming to New Hampshire. I'm assuming it's going to be right in Washington DC. So it raises the question, do we need to assume expenses?
Yes, Eileen?
I think that we can kind of cross that bridge when we get to it. You know, we have a budget. There's our budget is unlike some of the other, like maybe the school district's budget or the individual library's budget or something, because as we know, every year there are variables like the weather that can make a big difference as to what we spend. So, for instance, you know, we budget to an average as far as salt and sand and overtime and DPW, that kind of thing. And if the winter is mild, we have quite a bit of money left. So there is some flexibility potentially in there depending on what happens. So what I'm saying is I'm not concerned about it. If you needed more money, we could put a freeze here, do something there, stop this, you know, something. We could reprioritize later. I think there's enough money in the budget if that becomes a priority, to remove a different priority.
Okay. Thank you.
The next one, as you heard from Diane, 0101-8410, elections for voter registration. That's moving up to the election. There'll be 3 elections in this fiscal year. So that's an increased cost of about $9,000 more. So we've covered that. In general government, I would like to talk about 0101-8460. In the budget presentation, you heard a little bit about Last Rest Cemetery. They requested $10,000. The town manager felt prudent at $5,000 for that front section. Somebody right after the meeting sent me an email, and I just want to respond to that email. Yes, we are aware that there's perpetual care funds for that front section that the Last Rest Cemetery asked for. However, back in the 1800s, $1, you're not getting much in interest on perpetual care funds for $1 in that area. And that has the town tomb, which doesn't have any perpetual care funds for, and some other issues. The other reason why we thought it was prudent to look into Last Rest and help them with this $5,000 is there's a state statute that says the town needs to hold a cemetery, have a cemetery. We have a cemetery. It's over by South Fire Station. We have plots over there. However, in talking to Last Rest, they say they can get about another 15, maybe 20 years by doing their expansion project in the back. By helping them out with this $5,000 for maintenance, they can put some money towards putting that in and making that expansion of their cemetery in the back section towards Hillside Terrace. And that gives the town a little bit more time to come up with a plan to see where we want to put the next cemetery, where we might need it. Because by having that expanded, it also expands the life of our cemetery over by South Fire Station. So that's why we thought it was prudent to put this $5,000 in the budget.
Finley?
Just a thought, I suspect that part of the difficulties that they've encountered lately is the low safe investment rate that people generally get, that municipalities in this type of thing get. I don't know if that's it or not, but I'm imagining so.
Well, interest, like I said, on $1 is not like it was.
Yeah, but if it was invested all those years, you would think that would have.
But they've been taking
For the
perpetual
early days.
care out every year to mow it.
Just and kind of an uninterested comment is the trustees of trust funds can actually invest in stocks and bonds. they're the only ones that can. So the trustees of trust funds hold the cemetery perpetual care funds, and they can invest in
Unlike what we're locked
annuities
into.
and, right, exactly.
Okay.
So,
But
yeah.
now you're better off.
Yeah, but typically, they don't do anything speculative or,
Sure.
so they're doing utilities and those sorts of things that have relatively solid rates of return.
Dan? Just a comment that it's money well spent and when you consider that what this organization does, and if they were to just dissolve themselves, we would have to almost have a cemetery department and pick up all the slack on everything they do. So money well spent and not a lot of money to actually perpetuate a good job that they're already doing, of course.
And like everything else, Highland asked for a lot of financial statements, and they proved it to us.
Sure.
So, the last item that I'd like to discuss is what we kind of touched a little bit, and when we talked to library, is in general government employee incentive and raises 0101 8143. Just want to let you know that that's a placeholder right now, and we'll be more than happy to talk more specifics after the contracts are all settled
Okay.
with that. But just know that that's a placeholder. 0101 8143.
But the $5,000 incentive component has been there for a while?
For a long time.
Long time.
For a long time. $5,000 has been there for a long time.
Okay.
And we've used it for a couple of different things, like I said. There was,
No, I'm remembering, yeah.
there was an incentive because somebody had a cost savings issue. There was an incentive because somebody went above and beyond their duty to help. Bonus. Sure. Good job. Things of that sort.
Yep.
So that's basically general government in a nutshell.
Okay, any questions about this? Yes, Jody?
Thank you. Under 8270 dues and fees, I just didn't see the NRPC, the National Regional Planning Commission, on there.
That is in Tim Thompson's budget, 21.
Oh, thank you. I missed that. I apologize. I also saw that the Business Expo money, it says was offset by revenue. When we go through revenue, could you show me where that is? Because I missed it. I couldn't find it. It was late when I was looking at revenue, but still, if you'd point that out, that'd be great. And then I just had a question about elections. I know that the budget's increased this year because Diane indicated there's an extra election and it's going to be a large one. But I know when there was discussion years back about going from 3 polling sites down to 1, one of the factors was it would cost less money to run the election at one site. I remember that discussion distinctly, and I wondered if that has come to be the case.
Yes.
And I wondered if we had any kind of a, I don't want to put you on the spot, but is there any kind of a general idea how much money we're saving by going down to 1 spot over 3?
No, off the top of my head, $2,500 right away.
Okay,
We don't have to rent the hall, which is a rental,
okay,
and then there was meals for the other 2. And because
And
of
the police
the
details, probably?
less police details, and then the other thing is that even though we are paying for meals over here, we're not as many people, so
At
they
one
can
time.
shrink the number of clerks or check-in people.
Checklist people, tabulators, whatever.
Tabulators, things of that sort. So
Although the
there has been
presidential,
the savings.
okay,
You know, like I said, I know about just the meals and the rentals, about $2,500 alone,
Okay.
plus these other factors.
great, thank you,
All set, Jody?
thank you.
Bill?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Paul, can you talk a little bit about some of the upticks with 8407 with historic preservation?
8407 is,
Electricity.
we budget 5,000, we've been budgeting 5,160. One of the upticks is, we've been paying for, an internet access for them over there. and we give them a mobile hotspot and pay for that. So they can have internet access over at the one-room schoolhouse during the summer.
Well, there's an uptick in electricity by about a little over $300. Last year, I'm not seeing a dollar amount for insurance, but now this year I see a dollar amount for $1,000.
Those numbers come from Anita and her crew. That's what they asked for. We sat down with them a couple of months ago. I know that the insurance has gone up. Last year, do you remember, Tom, why they didn't pay insurance last year? I know she told us. I can't remember why she told us that. And electricity is going up because
everybody's going.
yeah, you know, that's just more accurate numbers. They're also moving from a pen and paper system to a computerized Excel system. So some of these expenses in the 16-17 budget they were able to track better, more accurate. The air conditioning is another reason why the electricity is going up, because they have to keep their artifacts at a climate-controlled temperature. In a one-room schoolhouse that's not 100% insulated properly, it kind of, you know. So that was one of her reasonings why some of this stuff went up. And then, you know, the insurance, I know she told me about the insurance, and I just can't remember why. I think it was a bookkeeping error on their part. They paid it, it just didn't come out. And insurance is going up for items.
I don't have a problem about the insurance going up. I have a concern with the fact that we have a building that, in my eyes, went a year without having any insurance on it.
That's not what he said.
I understand that, but I'm saying, when I look at this in the budget, it's telling me that we didn't pay for insurance last year.
No, there's no accounting for the insurance.
There's no accounting for the insurance, but that, I don't interpret it like that.
They paid for there was insurance on the building because they paid the bills.
It's just probably showing up in a different category, one of these different
be in it.
categories.
If you look at their miscellaneous is,
Yeah.
you know,
At 3,300,
It's
now
gone
this year
down.
it's 2,700.
right, you know,
Then the last question was, excuse me, would be, you have a less revenue line item for $2,500.
that was the number that they provided us. They said they get about $2,500 by selling the
Cards,
book, the
and
cards, the Christmas card. No, the Christmas cards are Heritage. They sell the books.
They sold, I don't know if these numbers were included here, but they've sold off a lot of artifacts that really had no bearing on Merrimack.
Right, I remember she said that.
And,
And she sold some books and some other things. There's
Yeah.
also a picture book about Merrimack. I think it's, I want to say it's either the second or third. I can't remember which one it is, but there's a picture book, and that's some of the sales of the picture book.
Yeah.
Picture.
Pitcher. Any other questions? Yes, John?
Paul, in computer services, the number actual in 14-15 was 96.9, and then it dropped to 68.8, and it's up to 73.8 now. Can you talk a little about what's going on there? The file server, it's 83.53.
Right. A lot of that is last year, in 14-15, we had the new website was for $11,500. That's included in the $96,000 number. There was, if you look at GASB 45 actuarial services, that there was $4,000 that we had to do for mid-year service. Basically, what GASB 45 service says is that it looks at health insurance, and some communities pay health insurance for their employees 100%, even when they retire. And it's a post-benefit obligation for communities. So we have to have an actuarial actually look at our numbers, even though we don't pay that benefit to our retirees. we have to actually have an actuarial look at it because our rate is a combined rate for our employees. So they take our total pool, including our retirees and our employees, and base our rates on the total pool that we have for employees. So I need an actuarial that actually goes in there and looks at what, if the retirees weren't in there, what the town would be paying. And that's an implicit cost to the town. And that was $4,000 that we need to have every year, whether it's the full one or the half-year one.
That's required as part of the audit. And just to give you kind of an example of that, even though the police and fire department employees can, until recently, retire at age 45 with a certain number of years of service. And when they do, they get a subsidy from the retirement system. So they can stay on the town's health insurance and apply that subsidy toward it, and then the balance they need to pay in some other form. But the point really is, if a person is retired and they have a single plan, and the plan costs $10,000, and they're paying for the $10,000 in whatever fashion it is, parts the subsidy, parts themselves, or whatever, they may have expenses, actual expenses. They had a big operation of something of $20,000. So that's affecting our rates. Even though we're not actually paying the premium, it's their experience is affecting our rates, and that's what he's talking about. Is that clearer?
Yeah.
Is it?
Yes, no,
Okay.
it is, thank you, because I didn't know that.
And then, of course, our repairs to our files and servers and computers, every time something breaks and we have to fix it, that comes out of that line also. So that was
That's
a little
gone
bit
from
more.
10 to 15 to 20,000 over 3 years, is that?
It's trying to get it to more accurate cost of what we spend on repairing equipment. You know, if for instance, if a server goes down, it might be a $1,000 bill to just to fix that server and get it back up and running. You know, the cost of repairs have gone up, and that's not only parts, which we know are not as expensive, it's the actual times for people to come in, and there's sometimes we need experts to come in and actually repair some of this stuff.
This is every department.
Well, that's the other thing too, is that computer service line for file servers and maintenance is for every department in town.
Everybody.
Everybody goes through that.
And that's fine. If it was
Yeah.
15 every year, you'd say, okay, that's fine. But it's going up by 50% last year, or in the budget we're in now, and another 33% this year's budget.
It was under budget in years past. The $20,000 is more reflective of the budget.
Okay. But, I mean, cost of filers is not going up that much, but you're
No.
saying the man hours, labor hours to do the work is going up.
Right.
In the next line, under other outside services, your bank fees are going up by $3,000 from 12 to 15?
Mm-hmm. And that's because of a couple of things. We went to one check, and there's a fee for that. We have getting during tax time, the amount of people who are actually sending their payments into the lockbox has gone up, which is an increased fee for use of the lockbox. So that went on. And then there was one other item that we brought on board with the state and the one check. By doing that, there was an added charge to do one check with the town, because we now have the ability to do an ACH file and send it out. And we had the ACH file with payroll, but now this is an ACH file for accounts payable. So there's a charge to having that avenue of the ACH file for accounts payable. Yeah. Well, if you're not writing a check and you're still doing it, banks are making their fees based on the number of pieces of paper that they're actually touching, whether they're touching it or not. So there's a charge per check charge. for deposits and per check charge when they cash a check. So, and our volumes are going up, and that's why we're seeing a little slight increase in our fees. And the lockbox has gone up because the usage of lockbox went up significantly.
Okay, but that's 25% increase, so that's why I asked.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
the other line on criminal records checks,
Right.
up 33%. Is that because we've had so much turnover? We're
So
doing
much turnover.
background checks on people that we're hiring, or?
Yeah.
what?
And sometimes we're doing background checks and having to turn people away and having to go and do another background check for the same position. So it isn't, oh, we lost 5 people, it's only 5 background checks. It could be 6 or 7
15 or
background
whatever,
checks.
How much is a background check?
It depends on how extensive you want to do. If you just want to do a criminal driving check, it's one thing, but if you wanted to go on and do a extensive background check. And some of the employees that we're looking at are out of state, so we have to get the out-of-state one, which are more expensive than the state of New Hampshire.
Do we records check every new hire?
Yes, yes, we do. We background check every new hire. And some hires, we go the next step depending on what positions they have.
Right. I would hope so, with things like police and stuff like that.
Police and anybody who handles money.
Okay.
Any other questions? Seeing none, let's move on to revenues, which is,
Proposed issuance of debt?
oh, I'm sorry.
There's no issuance of debt. That's quick.
No, there's no new issuance of debt, but I
27,
do
I'm
want
sorry, I did
to,
go by there.
I do want to bring something to the council's attention. Right now, we have 2 bonds that are outstanding. Greens Pond, which was issued a 15-year bond in 2002.
Number 27 is debt service.
Yes.
We have a total of $810,000 outstanding in principal, about $839,000 total outstanding. That include interest and principal.
800, and say it again?
$839,000. That bond will be paid off by June of 2018.
That was
Roughly, the yearly payment is about $290,000, principal and interest.
Right.
Which one was that? The Greens
Greens
Bonds?
Pond.
Yeah.
Then we had our drainage bond, which was also a 15-year bond. That will be paid off in June of 2023. We have $1,040,000 left in principal. We have $1,250,000 overall, including principal and interest. That's about $150,000 a year payment to include principal and interest. When looking at the debt, as you'll see, Greens Pond was 2002. It takes about a year before a bond, you start paying for a bond on the books. So that's why if you do 15 years on 2003, we paid off in 2018. So when we're having discussions about maybe issuing new debt, we need to take that into consideration, that it takes a year for it to come in, so you don't have the spikes.
You make one interest payment the first year, and
Right.
then the principal payment cuts in the second payment of the calendar year, but the first payment in the new fiscal year. Trying to
Right.
phrase it
So,
attractive.
so if we had a bond in the April, okay, and let's say it was approved, it really wouldn't kick in until the following year. Is that correct?
The bonds are issued twice a year. We usually go with the bond bank. Once they change them from
July
a
and
little bit to July and December, but they change them sometime to February and things like that, but it's twice a year. And so if you issue the debt in July, you have 1 half-year interest payment. The principal is always the same. So if you borrowed $1 million for 10 years, the principal is always $100,000 every year throughout the whole thing. It's
That's
the
evenly
interest that
distributed.
changes.
Okay.
the interest is paid twice a year. So if you issue your bond in January, which most people do, your first payment, no, if you issue your bond in July, your first payment of a half year's interest is due in January, which is still in the same fiscal year, as Tom was just saying. The next year, you pay both interests and the whole year principal. So the first year, you just see a little bit, and the second year, you see
What it will
the
be
whole
constant.
thing. And then each year it goes down because the principal is always the same and the interest goes down.
So an interesting thing that I want to bring up that I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, but you were pointing out that if we wait until our bond is completely paid off before we issue another bond, we're going to see a dip in our costs, our expenses for that year of overlap, if you will, where there isn't an overlap. So we're almost better off if we know we're going to be bonding to go ahead and bond a year in advance so that smoothly goes through and doesn't impact our tax rate.
Basically, yes.
I've had people suggest to me that we should pay off all our bonds before we bond anything else, and that's going to give us dips and bumps in our tax rate. Which, I mean, it's always nice to see the tax go down, but when it's going to jump right back to the same number the next year, it can be disturbing and cause all kinds of fluctuations with banks and all that other stuff. So there's an advantage to trying to keep it smooth. If we know we have debt to issue, it's prudent to think about it before the one runs out completely so that we can keep our expenses and costs as smooth as possible.
Yes, Abby?
That's a very important point because, as I said, the principal stays the same, so the debt payment isn't significantly decreasing, but 1 year it just jumps off the cliff. So, for instance, the Greens Pond one, when it is finished in 2018, we're going to lose $270,000 payment that year. So it would be a good idea if you wanted to put in the debt to fill that hole to do it the year before,
April of 17.
April of 17.
Next year's budget.
Yeah,
Which is next year's, right?
right. Good point, Tom.
So you don't get the peaks and valleys of it.
Quick question.
Yes, Steve?
What was that total amount in the beginning on Greens Pond back in '02?
Over $4 million.
Thanks.
Any questions from anyone? Okay. Now we can move on to map revenues.
Yes. There's a special tab in the front of the book that's called revenues.
Yeah.
Or if you're on the spreadsheet, it's the very last spreadsheet, the second to last spreadsheet.
So there's a revenue and a revenue too.
The revenue two is a summary.
Is what?
Is a summary.
Oh, yeah?
You're talking about special revenue?
No.
No.
No, because that's,
It's in the spreadsheets, Nancy.
okay. All right, I see that.
First one has it broken down by department.
Right.
Right, the first one is much more broad. When I first got here, where's the thick one? Where's the other one? When I first got here, it looked like, is this one? It looked like, it was 3 pages. And there were $5 on this line and $28 on that line. So I include it again, but then I summarize it for you. So that's what the difference between 1 and 2 is. So if you want to get down to the nitty-gritty detail of how, the fees are determined, it's there. Tax map, $75. Or you can just look at the summary. So what we see in the revenue is, in terms of increases and decreases, we have increased our, as I was talking to you about before, we receive an amount of money for franchise fees from the cable franchise fees, and we don't use all of it in the media services department. And so we have been steadily increasing that amount to offset taxes. So this particular, last year, we attributed $100,000 from the franchise fees to the general fund, and this year it's $150,000. So the total amount of franchise fees for a particular year is about $380,000 a year. So 150 of it this year is going into the general fund, and the balance is going to pay for the media division. Property tax interest is, that's interest on delinquent taxes. Auto registrations, this is one that we're seeing going up fairly steadily. If you look at what has happened over the past several years, back in 2011, we had 3.8 million. Surprising. It's an amount that by far the largest amount of non-property tax revenue that we bring in every year. This year we have in the budget, last year was $3,975,000 projected, but we actually received $443 million last year if you look at the actual in 14-15. So, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
4.4 million.
Whoa. I was going to say, I
What did I say?
hear that right.
It's a lot of trips to the
Oh,
Caribbean.
you know why? Because he put pennies in there, and it confused me. So anyway, so now, good save, huh? Right. 2016-17, we have conservatively increased it by $175,000. Is that right?
Yeah.
$175,000. And should you feel the interest in increasing that again, we would be comfortable with increasing it by another $100,000 if you would like. And the reason why we feel more comfortable about that now is that we have more data from this fiscal year on how it's tracking. And it seems to be coming in in the $440,000 range, but we don't know. We don't want to overestimate either. So let's see what else. Any big differences here? Ambulance revenues, where are they?
State revenues are dropping, huh?
Well, here we got any.
Like a
Rooms
rock.
and meals taxes are the same. That's the state revenue. Highway block grant revenue, that's the same.
Yeah, but that's
State-
for the biennium, and it's guaranteed for the biennium.
Right, but he just said they're dropping.
Well, look at the next one then, other state revenues.
The
71 down to 18.
I'm sorry, Tom.
Go ahead.
What did you say?
Look at other state revenues.
Other state, will you, let me just, please talk. I don't know what that is. Go ahead.
Other state revenues, the 18 is,
Railroad taxes?
no, the 71 was SRF money. We were getting SRF money
What is that?
to state revolving fund money. And now the $18,000 is the not the Convincer grant. So that's money that we get for the Convincer grant.
Oh, yeah.
That, because it's not unusual or we don't know about it, we have to budget
This
for
one.
it. It's not an unanticipated revenue, so we have to budget for the expense and revenue, and that's why it's $18,000.
Okay, the other thing that we've been talking about all along is the state bridge program. Last year was 1.2, almost $1.3 million, and that's the 80% that we receive from the federal government that we also have to add to the expense side. And this year, it's $2.6 million that's coming from the state for the Bridge Aid program that we also have to add to the expense side. So that's one of the reasons that it looks like our budget has increased significantly when it's increased the revenues and the expenditures.
Which is one of the things that need to be highlighted to be able to explain.
Exactly.
Well, we try that every year.
Oh, I know.
Right.
And still, there's one media outlet that insists on using the gross number without accounting for the revenues.
Oh, they do that on purpose, because
Yes.
we explain it in great detail.
It looks
Yes, yeah, it is, yeah. So, insurance rebates, that was the big one. We talked about that earlier. That was, for a couple of years, we were receiving money back from either NHMA or the Health Trust or whoever it was to make up for the settlement of basically of the lawsuit and sending the money back. I'm sure Jody, the school, got probably $1 million one year, but then you don't get it the next. So that's a big decrease in appearance. And then, let's see what else we have here. That's pretty much it.
Absolutely, Dan?
Under 3401, sewer rents, that seemed like it jumped up quite a bit,
Solid waste revenue?
700,000, from 3.6 to 4.3. Line 3401.
Yes. What we need to do, right. The sewer fund is, as you know, the first part up here is the general fund. The second part is the sewer fund revenue. So the sewer fund, the reason why the sewer fund amount has increased is because the rate has increased, but not to this extent. They have had to, we have all of a sudden had to start paying for, you probably saw the big bump in debt service in the wastewater treatment plant. We have started paying off those bonds that we issued for the compost and for the phase 2 of the sewer project, which were big bonds. So last year they didn't pay anything, and this year they raised the rates. They had money left over, and now they are using basically some of their. They don't really have a fund balance, but they're using some of their retained earnings to pay that off. If that makes any sense to you. So.
Are you talking about the rents, though?
No, it says rents, but it's sewer user fees.
Right, okay.
It says
All
rents,
right.
but sewer user fees.
Okay,
So,
because you said we were paying it, so it wasn't, I was
Right.
my mind was taken from the other side,
Okay.
I guess.
so I'll just try and be clearer.
No.
So, several years ago, we did a sewer rate study, and it included what the rates would need to be over the various years in order to accomplish these big projects that needed to be done. So we have been steadily increasing those rates as called for in the rate study, and accumulating money in order to be ready to pay these bonds. So this is a balancing item. So we save the money, we need to start paying the debt, and it's an offsetting amount. Does that make sense? to you?
Right, but when you were talking about this line, it's our income from the.
That's right.
Yeah, so I was,
I guess my question is, it just sounds like an awfully high increase. From 3.6 million of last year's budget, this year's budget's calling for 4.3.
Okay.
It just seems really large.
Okay.
$700,000, and that's what you're anticipating?
No, it should actually be in two lines. One should be using of their surplus.
Okay, I still don't know.
Okay, the sewer fund needs to balance.
No, I get that
Okay,
part.
all
I
right.
guess my question, why was it last year 3.6 million and this year it's 4.3?
That number is the balancing number between the revenues and the expenditures. So you bring in a certain amount of money for expenditures. I mean, you bring in a certain amount of money from the sewer user fees, and you've been doing it all along. But as you've been doing it, you've been saving money in your surplus. So the user fees haven't gone up that much. Some of it is coming from the surplus. So we should actually be putting it on two lines. We should be saying this is, because if you look at your debt service in the sewer fund, which is line, where's that, Paul?
27. Budget 27. It's $499,000 increase. Next page.
Okay.
Page 75.
What is this? Oh, okay. Page 75. So, does everybody have 75? Page 75?
It's the second tab.
These
It's
aren't
here,
numbers.
It's on 27, second, it's the bottom portion of 27's tab.
Okay.
Sewer fund.
Right, but the next page is the debt service on the sewer fund. And you can see here that the budget in 2015-16 was $361,000 for the debt. And this year, it's $860,000 for the debt, because we picked up two bond payments. But as I said, we have been increasing our rates steadily in order to pay for these. So even though the amounts of the sewer, from the sewer user fees are remaining relatively constant, we haven't needed all of it until this bond came to start paying all of that out.
Yeah,
Yeah, you understand me?
because I had the same question Dan did, so.
Yeah, but we should
Going back
have
and forth
put it,
between the two is.
we should have put it in
Helping
two
you.
different lines. The sewer user fees have not gone up significantly, nor have we taken on new sewer
Right, and
users.
that's what it looked like from that line
It
item.
did,
So I had the
it
same
did.
question that Dan did.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Thank you.
Do you get it now?
I do, yep.
Okay, good.
I have another comment, though.
Absolutely.
Yeah, going backwards a little bit, when you said our issues of debt, you said we only had two bonds, the Greens Pond and the drainage bond. And so is this in the sewer, isn't that another bond?
That's the town.
Those two were the general fund bonds. These are, the other bonds, this compost and phase two, were
They pay
all
for it.
paid by user fees in the sewer fund, the enterprise fund.
Yeah.
I forgot that, yeah.
One relates to the tax rate and one does not. Okay, so I believe that that's it for significant increases.
To answer your question that you asked earlier about where do you see the money for the Business Expo
Yeah,
and
I don't
Merrimack
see it.
Recs, yeah. It's, if you look at, it's on the first page, it's page 5.
You're looking at the detailed
On the
part,
detail.
not the summary one.
So this one,
Nope, the next one, page 5.
These aren't, oh,
this one.
Yes. Right, if you go, you'll see the black line on the, about a quarter way down that says surplus. Go up to, you see other revenue. It's lumped into that 35,500 number
Okay.
for other revenue. We just don't break it out. Because, as Eileen said, this is 4 pages long.
Thank you. Yep.
Okay, are there any other questions about this particular? Yes, Jody?
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, the after-school care, the town manager had indicated no revenue, and I remember when we had Parks and Rec before us during budget, you said it was great to start some new programs, but let's not start all those new programs. So I'm assuming that that program isn't going to be encouraged to be launched this coming fiscal year.
Yes, the first thing that I want to do is I want to get the summer camp and the camp programs rounded out and settled, and then we can get into daycare if it is needed, because we have to have that whole discussion. We have to have the public involved. We have to talk to, have a public hearing and see if the daycare centers are, feel they'll have an impact on that, after-school programs, that kind of thing. So I think it needs more thought, and there may be other implications. So I want to start out with getting a solid handle on the programs that we have, expanding to the seniors and adults as well, and the teens, and then get into kind of those service type of.
That sounds very reasonable to me, and I
Yes.
support
Yeah.
your position on that. So that's a whole nother realm of services that, and while I applaud our director's enthusiasm and the new programs that are coming forward, I think when you start getting into services such as those, you could be biting off way more than you're ready to chew, and so I'm happy to see that, Eileen, and I support you in that position. Thank you. Then I don't necessarily have a question, but since we like to talk about philosophies on this board, the franchise fees going into the general fund, that just bugs me. I know I've heard you say that before too. And having sat on the Cable Advisory TV Committee, which is now defunct, I also understand that we have, our hands are tied and we don't have a lot of leverage when it comes to negotiating our contract with the provider, the cable provider in town. But I just want to go on the record as saying that the fact that these franchise fees are as high as they are, in my opinion, is unnecessary. And I think people that get the cable services in town are paying too much for them. And it's very frustrating. And then to have that extra money, and the user fee, in my opinion, should go for that service that the people are paying to use. So to have that money, while I'm not going to give you a hard time about it, but to have that money go to offset the taxes in the general fund just bugs me. And I'm not, it's not something that I'm comfortable with. So I don't think there's anything we can do about it. I know they've had discussions till they're blue in the face about changing the contract, and I get that we're kind of, our hands are tied because they're the only game in town, but I just wanted to voice my displeasure with that, and thank you for hearing me out.
I don't know this for a fact, but I'll have to look into it. But I think it's the franchise fee, at least part of it is a local option.
Yeah, we
Percentage, I
did
think,
negotiate a lower franchise fee.
We did go down.
Right, it did go down. The reason why the money is up in general government is because I want to say, when we were negotiating that contract, we were going to start using general their surplus, so to speak, to start lowering their fund balance down, and that's why part of this is there, is to help in that process that the council voted on. This is when Keith was still here, that he discussed reducing their balance down. And what's been happening is that media from $500,000, $600,000 and bring that down steadily.
And I think we did decrease the percentage in the fee,
And we
too.
did decrease the percentage. However, we've been seeing a spike in what we're receiving. We're receiving about $95,000 a quarter because of all the new digital programming and things of that sort.
Because the cost of the
The
cable's
streaming
going
and
up.
stuff, and those items. So
Percentage.
you are right, but the reason why it's up there in general government is to try to move that balance, that fund balance in media down to where the council said it five years ago.
And
now.
I really appreciate the decrease in the percentage, I really do, but you would never know it from their rates, because
That's right.
it's ridiculous.
Which is-
It's absolutely ridiculous.
Which is inversely proportionate, because the rates go up, even though our percentage is less, the money comes out the same.
Exactly. So it's just,
Funny thing
it's,
about
it's,
that, right? They just suck it up.
and it's just something that really bugs me. So
It
I
just
just
went up-
wanted to vent, thank you, I appreciate it.
Just went up $5 this month.
I think the reason, it had been a beef of mine for a while, so we did lower the interest, I think it was from the tax
fee,
amount from 5 to 4%, because we knew that there were more funds accumulating than they could ever really want to spend unless they started going on cruises. And it just, because everything's going up, it's something.
It's sort of caught up with
I don't know how to go about changing. I don't know if it's contract negotiation time or that's something.
It's
we
a
can
10-year
arbitrarily
deal.
do. Yeah, but I didn't know if changing that, because they don't get, that becomes ours, so or, the media departments and all, so I don't know if that can be changed midstream or whatever, I have no idea.
We'll have to look into it. I don't know either. I know that it was done, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago now, and I don't know.
Yeah,
if
It's done 4 or 5 years ago, and part of the negotiations was we were trying to absorb some of that differential between the cost of operating the media department and what we anticipated collecting in fees by trying to get Comcast to give us a lower rate for the elderly. And they adamantly refused.
Said, oh, no.
It was stronger than that, but it was, it was stronger than that. Because they just didn't want to be, it's sort of like our friends that we're dealing with the pipeline and arguing over that access agreement. They didn't want to have that precedent on the book someplace that everybody else could point to.
Yep.
Tom?
So we got a crappy, lower rate for, piece of crap service.
I was just venting, thank you.
Paul, you talked about,
Apparently, so did Tom.
you talked about the media capital reserve fund or reserve funders. Is that in our budget here anywhere? How much is in that fund?
No, that's basically it's a fund balance because it's a special revenue fund. If they receive excess revenue over expenditures, it goes into their fund balance, and so if they spend more than what they receive in revenue, it decreases their fund balance. It's about $600,000 right now. So, and that's, we're trying to get that down, and that's why we increased the $50,000 to help try to get it down.
So they're spending $277,000 this year.
Right.
We took out 150,
Right.
and the income was 234,000.
$385,000, $384,000 total.
So it says here, cable TV franchise fees as a revenue, of 234.
234, that's going directly into the media division. That's what the cable franchise is. Got to add the two numbers. It's the 150 and the 284.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
The
So
other
you
thing we
split
figured,
it out in advance.
Right, I split it out in advance.
the other thing we figured is when the contract ends,
Got 600,000.
at the end of 10 years, we
That'll
figured
be-
that franchise fees were going to
Go
go away
away.
as a dinosaur.
That's right. That's right.
So this would give us,
A little bit of,
potentially give us a cushion to fund that department after that
for a while.
for
That's
a
right.
while,
I had
so that we
forgotten
could
that.
Okay.
work that into the budget and do it gradually if we wanted to.
Yeah.
That is something I have not heard before, so.
Yeah,
But
I agree.
are we
I remember that.
Are we concerned about depleting that amount too much at this point, taking
Yeah.
out an additional 50,000 this year? Or,
Well, which is
Yeah,
how
that's,
much?
that's a good question, if that's the plan.
There's 600 in there now?
600, and
That's
really, we're only
Just
taking
2.5
out,
years.
we're only taking out, yes, 2.5 years. We're only taking out $50,000 of that $600,000.
So when
to
is the
cover extra
10-year
cost.
contract up?
Above
Do
and
we
beyond.
remember?
I mean,
Let's
you
see,
know, we're taking out
10,
150.
2011,
Potential growth to that number.
Right, it's, yes,
probably
yes.
2018,
And if we let that go for 5 years, there'd be $1 million in there.
2018, 2019.
But we've been hearing about this franchise for 10 years now,
About it going away.
going away. I remember the conversation, the first budget meeting I had, they talked about it going away next year.
Yeah,
And it hasn't, you know,
we renegotiated.
but no, from federal government. And they've been talking about it, this is, you know, federal that allows it.
Yeah, they've
And
been,
they've been talking about it for over 10 years now.
yeah, they had been preempting more and more things that we could deal with in the contract negotiations. And we just figured eventually the idea is to get rid of the franchise fee. So they can tack that onto their bill. And retain the revenue.
Because we wouldn't notice. Okay, so any other discussion,
you come
philosophical
back.
or otherwise?
Even if we cut out the $5 franchise fee,
They'll
okay,
increase their.
you'd still be paying the same amount of money.
Oh, yeah, I have no doubt. It's just the principle
I know.
of the matter.
Okay, if there's nothing else to discuss, I think we can adjourn this discussion, this workshop, right?
So moved.
I'll see everyone
If there's
on
any minutes.
Thursday for the regular meeting at 7 o'clock here.
I like 7 o'clock. 6 o'clock is a little bit of a headache.
But look at we got,
So is that a
good night,
move and
everyone.
all accept, or is that not even a motion?
We don't need
Nobody
a
cares.
motion, right? Because it's not a,
It's a meeting.
do we have to move to adjourn?
No,
I would,
there's no,
Because it's a workshop at
are there
7.
minutes? Yes, there are minutes.
there are going to be minutes.
All right, there are.
Motion to adjourn.
There we go. Let's be official whether we need
Second.
to or not. Motion made by Bill Boyd, seconded by Tom Mahan. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I think that's unanimous, 700.